Hey everyone, and a massive welcome to the next edition of the CISO Experience. My name's Simon Linstead. I'm the host and founder of the InfoSec Live community, and have we got another exciting show for you today. Before we begin, a couple of things. Firstly, love the new intro. Hope you agree. Bit of an upskill on the production value there, thanks to our sponsor Bramfit. But a bit of housekeeping, I suppose, before we start. And if you're watching this live, please do jump in the comments. We like to try and keep these events as interactive and engaging as possible. And for those of you watching after the event on a replay, please do drop your thoughts and opinions in the comments to give us some feedback. It would be much appreciated. And of course, like, subscribe, and hit that bell to be notified of any future content. And for those of you who don't know anything about the InfoSec Live community, we're an independent social network community of 3,000 cyber professionals set up in June last year by myself, sharing best ideas and practice in the world's first, I believe it's the world's first, dedicated security social network. And this show has been created to help further the sharing of best ideas and practice with our industry's leaders and to provide extra learning opportunities for all of the community. And the only reason this is possible, and for those that do know, our community is 100% free, offers tons of support to our members, and that's only possible thanks to our sponsor, Bramfit Technology Lab. So before we begin, quick bit about Bramfit. Bramfit are an international cybersecurity consultancy leading the way in innovation and cyber resilience. Their entire team is owner managed and works on a linear structure, drawing expertise from the military, government, finance, and technology industry. And together they provide support and collaboration to those who protect company assets and sensitive data. And through research, education, and execution, Bramfit help protect your systems and your reputation. And as their CEO, Lewis Bramfit, recently said, if you're a CISO suffering from Big Four fatigue, reach out to Bramfit today and see how they can help. I'll drop their link in the comments below a bit later as well for those of you who want to find out a bit more. So get my breath back, wipe my brow because it's warm in this office. Let's talk about our next guest. Very excited to bring on in a few moments Stephen Gilmer. Stephen is a certified Chief Information Security Officer with more than 25 years of experience as a technical expert and executive leader, focused on securing technology companies' most sensitive and valuable data and systems. Previously was in-house CISO at both a biotech startup and at 2 Fortune 10 aerospace, defense, and technology companies. And in these roles, Stephen designed and implemented sensitive data and IP security control programs, shaped policy at the national level and security framework formation, and proactively resolved complex investigation, audit, and regulatory oversight issues. Also, Stephen is a Six Sigma black belt who led the transition of the IT infrastructure of a private startup to address the regulatory and operational requirements of becoming a PLC, a publicly traded company. And as a CISO executive in an aerospace defense company subject to a consent agreement with the US government, Stephen also led global cyber investigations, risk analysis, engagement, and mitigation controls necessary for the organization to successfully navigate the oversight requirements and re-establish the credibility with government customers. Oh, get my breath back. You've done so much, Stephen. Concurrently, Stephen built and led the cybersecurity components required to support winning and executing multi-billion-dollar government contracts, frequently speaks at global cybersecurity conferences, publishes articles on the business necessity of proactive cyber risk management, and advises on and conducts cybersecurity education and training for corporate leadership, including the board of directors, the C-suite, and compliance officers. I'll stop rambling on. Hope the intro was spot on for you there, Steve, and it's absolutely great to have you on the show.
Hey, Simon, glad to be here. Intro is spot on, and I'm excited in that new intro. It's a star guest. I can't wait to meet him. So fantastic.
No, I should have told you before, that is you. And for the community, you know, don't put yourself down. We've had some amazing CISOs on the show so far. I think this is number 12, the 12th episode, and it's just been a massive learning curve for me and for everyone watching. So I'm sure that today will be no different. I'll build your part up there, and I'm sure that you can deliver on that. Is there anything that I missed, Steve, in the intro?
No, you didn't miss anything. In fact, you were just reminding me why I take vacation in the mountains where there's no cell signal.
Do you know what? It's my wife and I were talking about this earlier. So I probably shouldn't say this because I work in cybersecurity. And if burglars are listening, they'll know I go on holiday tomorrow. We have got a house sitter and a 9-stone bull mastiff before I tell you we're going away to Corfu. And it will be our first holiday in 6 years. But it will be my first holiday, I think, in the last 30 years of working where I'm not my own boss, where I haven't got staff to worry about. And I'm literally going to turn my phone off for 7 days for the first time. And I cannot wait, Steve.
You know, we're talking about vacations and they're well needed, but it reminds me of a story now many years ago. At least those in the US will remember when most of the East Coast lost power in that huge rolling blackout. At the time, I was an IS manager in charge of infrastructure. Our company was multinational. We were based out of Detroit. That's where our data center was. It ran the globe. And you can imagine we were like everybody else. Huge hit when that happened. Except I was actually off the north coast of Denmark on an island called Fanu. No Wi-Fi, no cell phone signal. Didn't watch the news, didn't read the papers because I didn't speak Danish. So it didn't make any sense to turn any of that on. I was there for 2 weeks, drank a few beers, played some bocce ball, went and found Amber with my kids in the sand. Yeah, it's just
Wow.
great family time. And we enjoyed it, loved it. And we, vacation ended and got down to Copenhagen and got on the airplane, and they had their little cart there, grab some free papers. Time to catch up and see what's going on in the world. And it's like, oh my goodness, what have I missed? And fly back. And our first entry into the US was Boston, and we were stuck. We had to go out in a hotel, still backups from everything that is going on. And so I get home finally, about 30 hours later, and I go into the office to see what's happened. And my office is right next to the data center. And I see nothing but a trail of equipment. It took me like 25 minutes to clear a path to my door, to my office. And my team, full props and credit to them, had ripped up and transferred that data center in about 24 hours, moved it from Detroit to Chicago to another facility. Wasn't ideal, but it's where we had power. It's where we could operate. It's where we could make the world run again. And that was a really good lesson early in my career that A, train your people well, but B, trust them, and C, count on emergencies happening when you're not available.
Yeah.
You're not going to be sitting around saying, go do this, go do that, whatever it is.
It's called Murphy's Law, isn't it, Steve?
You know what? I think it was peace. I enjoyed it. I'll be honest. I didn't live through the nightmare.
I think it speaks volumes about building that team around you, though, doesn't it? Because that isn't an overnight thing. And you say to have the trust of everyone, but again, that takes time, doesn't it? And
it does. It takes time. It takes understanding there's going to be mistakes. And, I have always tried to encourage my teams not to make mistakes for mistakes' sense, but to say the fact that you're acting, the fact that you're applying your knowledge and your skills, that's the most critical function. There is no guide I can give you that will tell you what to do in every situation. So go do it. Go make mistakes. And then the other piece of that, my philosophy at least, is recognition. And so I will do the opposite, right? I'll take the blame. Something goes wrong, I'm responsible for the team. But when it's good, I bring in whoever that individual was that ran that project for me, and they go in front of my executives and they go in front of the rest of the team. And I say, yep, this is what we did. And now I'm turning it over to so-and-so to let them tell you about it because they led this project for me. And that gives them a chance to be seen by the rest of the leadership team. And that's important. And in that, that's what builds that trust in that team. They know they can make mistakes. You've got their back. They know that if they're trying to do the right thing, you're going to support them. And conversely, I started with that vacation in Fanu, but I can go away and I can sleep at night because I know the team is going to execute and not be afraid and not be paralyzed.
And that's hugely important. And it brings me, I should have said this at the start, actually. So we've got the flashy new intro. Again, I can't take credit for that. Kind of have up to this point because I haven't said anything. There's a young lad called Henry Lease Poole who's in further education, and he is doing digital art and design. And he works a couple of days a week for Bramfit. And I spoke to him last week about some graphics and stuff that I wanted made and talked to him about potentially making a new intro video. And he knocked that video up in about 3 or 4 hours one afternoon. And he's blown me away with that. I've got 6 children of various ages, some roughly that age as well. And there's not many of them, no disrespect to my own kids, but there's not many of them who could have done anything that good,
No, and that's fantastic. I was just kind of laughing here, thinking of the troubles you and I had connecting, and he made the video. So more credit to him. And you're right. And our children don't follow in our footsteps. I've got a son. He's in college to become a nurse, and a daughter in high school. It's still figuring out where she wants to go, but neither one of them cares about computers beyond, yeah, it's a tool in their life, and that's it.
Yeah.
They could care less about what I do professionally, other than every parent, it pays the bills, puts a roof over the head, the things they care about, but yeah, no big deal.
I think I'm fortunate coming into this industry now. So I've only been in the industry for a couple of years, but out of my 6 children, I've got 2 who love tech, and one of them is actually doing advanced education in the UK at the moment, something called T levels, which is a new further education for technology, and you can focus on things like digital art again, or cybersecurity, or all the different things. And he absolutely loves that. So for the first time at 48 years old, or nearly 48 years old, my kids are looking up to what I'm doing at the moment and quite like it, because I spent 20 years in financial services, which bored the absolute pants off everyone. So it's nice, but you're right. They're also different. And you mentioned the nursing. My eldest son's 23. He did nursing for 2 years. He's actually just left because he was
Okay.
looking after people with brain injuries and found it really challenging, quite upsetting. Lost a few clients from the home, who passed away, and I think he struggled with it quite a lot. So he's actually stepped back from that, and he's now doing business development in the travel industry, completely different. But again, it's finding your niche, isn't it? I mean, I didn't find what I seemed to like doing until about 12 months ago. So I left it a little bit late, but it sounds like you found yours quite early from the resume I went through earlier.
It's funny. Getting ready for this, I actually pulled up LinkedIn to just look at it and kind of remind myself where I've been. And it said, I had like 17 items on there, and I looked and I said, well, it only goes back to 2000. So clearly there's a lot more. And I was thinking about it. You know, I was hacking before there was a term for hacking. I was doing social engineering before there was a term for social engineering. I actually can go back to, the late 70s when I started with all this, and my interest. I was a kid. I was middle school, high school. I was going to the library and using a 300 baud teletype machine and the old POTS phone with the rotary, dial, and get the screech in your ear and jam it into the modem and, start to get it going. And that's how I learned how to program. First it was playing, games, but it was like, well, how do they work? And that started an interest in programming, and candidly that started an interest in hacking, not to take over anything or do anything malicious, but to learn more.
Yeah.
So I found another kid who was into it like I was, and his dad happened to work in a data center for the school. And so, back then, poor security, by the way, guys, I'll say this up front. They kept all their passwords in a giant book, printed it out every month. And so,
Did it say passwords on the front? Or
oh, it literally, yeah, it was logins. And so we, went in to get a tour. And while we got the tour, we're writing down all these things, passwords and usernames from the book. And, you know, go, take your dad around the corner. I need to write some stuff down. The old dumpster diving to get, phone manuals and understand how the systems work and all that. But, that's how we learned back then. There wasn't a formal class for me. So,
it
and I,
was similar-ish for me, other than I never really got very good at it. So I used to go around my cousins when I was about 6 or 7, and he got, I think it was a Commodore VIC-20 for his birthday one year, and it was amazing. And I got one, I think, for Christmas after begging my mum and dad. And then the game, you say about games, it was Jet Set Willy, if you can remember that game from the ZX Spectrum. It's
yep.
got Manic Miner days. And I remember getting into that. And then I was learning how to program and make the screen change color. I think that's about as far as I got it on the on the Spectrum. But it's funny, isn't it, how the resources and the opportunities out there now, it's as though it's flipped on its head, but equally there's too much, it seems. And people are now confused as to what routes to take, seems to be the conversations I've been having a lot of, especially with those now coming in.
I think that's fair. I mean, it's definitely an information explosion, and it's not just in computers; it's everything, right? It doesn't matter what your topic is. If we again jumping back a little bit, I used to love the fact that the internet lets you connect with small groups that were into whatever you were. Gaming you'll hear is a rut for me. MUDs, multi-user dungeons, if you remember those. Um,
Don't do you know? I used to have the books actually when you used to roll your dice, turn to
yep.
page 211. So that was my childhood, Steve. So I know
Yeah.
exactly what you mean with that. Yeah.
But those relationships that you made, like there was a Roger Waters album that came out, Pros and Cons of Hitchhiking. Well, in the US, they censored the album cover. I didn't like that. And so, through the mud, I had connections in Australia. And so, had a friend who said, "Hey, I'll go buy it and ship it over to the States for you and just send me the money back." And, but it was fantastic. And those were the early days, right? And so back to your comment about too much. Now everybody's getting lost down those rabbit holes and doesn't realize that there's still a broader world out there. And it makes it a challenge. But
I think
it,
this just jump in the chat quick. We've got
yeah,
Paul Sneddon's in the chat, and he's one of the technical testers from Bramfit, and his background is fascinating. So Paul does not come from the traditional background. I think it was Halford's, the motor store that Paul worked at for a long time in the UK, and he did automotive. I think it was electronics, so stereos, sat navs, installations. He's now building stuff in his lab at home that stuff that I've never seen or can comprehend. The guy is so smart, but looking at his history, you wouldn't have thought he was a typical entrant into the cybersecurity industry, but he is one of the top testers. I'll bow down to you, Paul, out of the 50 at Bramfit. The guy's amazing. And he comes from a motor vehicle background.
but that's the beauty of it, right? It's not about a certain mindset. It's about being able to look at it and understand how it connects and how it works and put it all together. I use a saying with all the boards I've ever talked to. If I had some magic pixie dust and I could spread it across our entire environment to protect everything, by the time it hit the floor, somebody's figured out a new way. A guy like Paul has looked at it in a way that we never thought about, when I spread that and figured out a different way
Yeah.
to do something. And that's what makes it interesting. It's what makes it challenging. It's what makes it dynamic.
It is, and we need people like that. I mean, he was in the group chat today. Sorry, Paul. I hope you don't mind me saying this out loud. It's quite personal. He's building so rubber duckies. We all know what a rubber ducky is. They're quite expensive. So Paul decided to make some himself, which I thought was quite
Yeah.
impressive.
No, it's where you want the world to go, right? I mean,
Yeah.
there's times it's nice to buy something. There's times it's nice to own it and understand it and really take it forward. So, congrats,
How
Paul.
how do we encourage more firms to embrace the different talents we've got out there? Because back to the whole broken recruitment structure, whether you're blaming hiring managers, candidates for unreasonable expectations, or wherever the blame's pointing today, that it doesn't seem to be working pointing fingers, does it? So there must be a way
No,
we can change that. Have you got any bright ideas, Steve? I suppose.
I don't know if I call them bright ideas, and I would say that my general leaning goes against my natural inclination. And by that, I mean, all the years I've spent doing this, it's been the same problem throughout the entire time. Companies don't want to embrace cybersecurity. I've been in this industry long enough that we had to actually encourage them to embrace IT in general. Um, I believe this is probably the only profession where you have folks like myself that started out trying to convince organizations to embrace IT are now trying to convince them to blow up that very environment that you had to convince them to take and start over and implement it correctly by today's standards and not live with that legacy. Normally, the change doesn't happen that rapidly. But, I look at it this way. I can't think of another aspect of any organization except for cyber that 100% across the board, has virtually zero requirements. If you want to start a business, you've got to meet certain tax
Yeah.
codes. You've got to meet certain safety codes. And depending on what industry you're going in, there's more requirements, more regulation. I don't favor regulation in general. I'm like anybody else. I don't want somebody or something to tell me what to do. But the fact that you can go build $1 billion business and collect, information literally on billions of people around the
Yeah.
globe and have no requirements of how you protect that data or what you do with that data, I find that a mistake. And I think there
Yeah.
needs to be, and I didn't invent this term, but a minimum standard of care for cyber that's required by
Completely
all
agree.
businesses.
I completely
Today,
agree. And it's not enough, Steve, to do that per country either. It needs to be a global requirement. The problem with that is we're a little bit divided at the moment. Saying that though, not that the US or the UK aren't divided enough. We can't agree between ourselves about anything either at the moment, can we?
no, and we need to step. And I wish politics didn't come into play. We can't avoid that, but the reality is that when you talk to most companies, you're going from zero to something, and that seems like it's a big lift.
Yeah.
And the reality is, if they were going from a minimum level to something, it's a small evolution. It's not a big lift.
I mean, give
And
you give
that's
you an idea. In the UK, there's something called Cyber Essentials, which is a very low cost starting point for companies. Tick box self assessment for companies to go through for cyber. It's very cheap. It's promoted by the government. I think less than 1% of UK companies have that. So if no one's even got that, which I would say is preschool level kind of
right.
cyber, it's a massive jump. And the word you mentioned earlier came up in the news today, the word legacy. And I use that in relation to systems. And in particular, the National Health Service in the UK is currently under ransomware attack. I don't know if you'd read that in the news. And I think a lot of that is down to the old legacy based systems that they've got. And I think trying to migrate from paper based, it was ironic in the press today. They were talking about how it's been a nightmare for 2 weeks because they haven't been able to access any data online. Well, the last time I went to a UK hospital, they're still using paper files anyway. So maybe
Right.
that's not such a bad thing.
Well, and you talk about legacy. I spend a lot of time here in the U.S. Helping defense companies, the defense industrial base, and we implemented a standard. I started working on the standard along with NIST and the DoD and others in 2013. NIST 800-171. Today we call it CMMC,
Yeah.
but companies are still struggling with that because they didn't implement it, almost 10 years ago now. In 2023, it'll be a decade since we started the draft. And they get really upset when you look at them and say, really, NIST 800-171 is Cyber 101. There's a couple of terms in there that don't fit. But if you replace CUI or controlled unclassified information, for those that don't know the term, with important stuff, that's it.
Yeah. But
That's
then
what we're really
we're back
talking
to
about.
the problem of acronyms, confusing terminology, and it was no different in financial services. The same there. And the technical people in financial services were very good at confusing their clients when it came to investments through being over technical. And I think there's a big risk of that staying and happening more and more in this industry. And I think you already mentioned the fact of the need to be able to communicate and relate that in terms that aren't technical. Risk to someone on the C-suite. Risk is a different term. They see risk differently to what we talk about in risk as cybersecurity. And it's explaining that risk in dollar terms, isn't it, to them, that they understand, and I suppose playing on their emotions a little bit to help understand as well, perhaps.
It's twofold, right? So I agree 100% with what you said in explaining risk to them and trying to put it in terms that make sense. Dollars, how is it going to affect our strategic outlook? Is it going to affect our operations? What does this mean to me? But it's also them stepping up and realizing that just as they came to understand dollars or they came to understand the operational components of their business, they need to start to get the cyber basics down. No one's asking them to become a CISO. No one's asking them to become a security engineer or anything like that. But we didn't ask them to become a CFO either, but they understand finance. And so that, the boards and the rest of the executive team need to really step up. I'm sure for every one of you on this call, it's walked into a boardroom, you've encountered the first comment that I get almost every time. Are we secure, and will we continue to stay secure? It's like you're asking for absolutes that have never existed. Are we profitable, and will we continue to be profitable? Are we making
is that I think so, and probably is the answer.
The answer is we're secure at the moment. We have work to do, and there's no absolutes. And let's talk about that and put it in context, because that context is critical. That question outside of that context is meaningless.
Absolutely.
So it's about bringing it there.
I just noticed that Aaron X, or should I say Robert?
I was going to go there.
Yeah, his real name is Robert. We'll just make everyone aware of that, Robert, in case you were trying to hide your real identity. I'll see you in Corfu for our holiday. No, just joking. So, question for Steve: what are your thoughts on BISO role? It's something that's come up a couple of times, actually. He currently assists the CISO in his role and shares his workload. Would this be a good way to progress?
It's a great way to progress, and it's an important role. I talked about teams right at the beginning. The BISO is an important role, and when your business is big enough to need that, nobody has eyes and ears that are every place. Nobody has a policy or a procedure that's going to work 100% of the time, and you need critical, smart, intelligent people in those roles to go take care of it. When I was at some of my companies, our business units, or we have the BISO, they were multi-billion-dollar business units. These are not, 20 people underneath a division necessarily. I mean, in some cases, they could stand up and be their own business if they were to split off, and they'd stand up and be a Fortune 50 or a Fortune 100 company. So no, it's a fantastic place to be. It's important to understand, your role in that is a translator in a lot of ways. How do you take your technical teams and let them understand what the business is really asking? What is going to drive our strategic value? How does that align to the job I've been given to do today? And then vice versa, helping the business leaders understand what your team is doing and how that enables them, how that supports the operational decisions that they're doing. There's a big disconnect that, cyber is still in the back room. Probably a decade ago, it was very popular to say, we open the door, we throw some meat in the room, and we close it again, and we just leave those guys alone. That's that's how it operated, and that's not true.
That reinforces the other comment, doesn't it, from Gregor? The change from looking at IT as a disturbance to a business enabler is still going on, and it probably will for some time.
It's going on, and it's still totally transforming. I mean, forget the branding, the future of the metaverse and, where we're going to go. Are we going to be avatars in a virtual world? And where's this hybrid world? And, for those who want to be left alone or those that want to immerse, both are, it's going to take a long time. But the reality is we all want some augmentation. We'd all be happy if we could walk up and I could say, wait, who's that guy across? Oh, it's my glasses go. That's Simon. Hey, Simon, sorry. I, didn't see you standing there. And I could say hello and just, not tell me what to say in a conversation, but just help me out. Oh yeah. Last time I saw you was a conference, 18 months ago. How fantastic. Make our world just a little bit better.
Yeah, I agree. There's lots of positives for it. I mean, we hear a lot about the negatives, which obviously there are, as there are with anything. You'll always get people exploiting whatever technology or whatever new thing comes out. But the benefits, for medicine, there's just so many. I think we're only at the very start of it now, and it's something that I certainly don't understand enough. I mean, Web3 itself, I don't understand enough. It's something I'm going to have to research, I think, for my own sanity over the next few months anyway.
I look at it as an extension. Yeah, you can call it Web 2, Web 3, whatever. It's an extension of the original intent of connecting the world and letting it operate. And it's like so many different things in this world. I mean, we can go back to the history of humans, right? Without fire, we wouldn't have survived. And it's just critical to where we are today, even though it's nothing to do with the technology we're talking about, but it's critical. And yet fire's been used to do so many horrible things,
Yeah.
like all technology. It can be used for good. It can be used for bad. Sometimes defining what's good and what's bad is difficult, and it changes as the world changes. But, that's really, to me, the intent of the internet when it first came out, and using it, you know, which feels like eons ago, and all dial up, but it was about connectivity and sharing, and embracing your knowledge. I mean, sorry guys, I'm old enough that, when I went to school, schools wanted you to memorize things and repeat it back on your school test, right? And I used to get annoyed at my teachers and say, what's the point of that? I can look it up in an encyclopedia, and I got a whole set of them, right?
Yeah. Let's
Today,
not forget though, when I was at school also, if you didn't do it properly, I used to get hit with a slipper. So it was quite a while ago.
well, they didn't do that in the US, but
I think they still do it here, but only in private schools. I think you have to pay for that.
I have a niece and nephew who are going through that in the UK. So yes,
Yeah.
I have, as far as I know, they've not been hit, but I heard it is a
Very
possibility.
strict. I mean, I
Yeah.
was fortunate enough to be privately educated in the UK, and until I was 13, when my parents split up, I went off the rails and ended up at the local state comprehensive. And the difference between the two, Steve, I can't even begin to tell you. Yeah, let's not go into that one. We'll move on. Ephraim has dropped in the comments. I actually spoke to this very, very bright young man yesterday. Bit of background on him. So 18-year-old or 19 years old, sorry if I get that wrong, from Nigeria, been over here, I think a year or so now, doing a degree in cybersecurity. From time to time in the InfoSec Live community, I do some OSINT challenges, and it's not as technical as it sounds, because what I do is find pictures of where I've been on the past holidays, drop them in and let people find them. And this young man blew me away 2 days ago. Not only did he identify where it was, but the methodology he used to do that and the way his brain worked. So he went right back and looked at my whole life to work out where this could be. And it was just absolutely mind-blowing. And he's asked a question: what things can one do while in uni to help you get a job when you graduate so you can fulfill the crazy experience requirements of the job market today? Good question.
Yeah, it's a great question, and a couple different approaches to it. So first, I'm going to tell you a story about a brilliant young woman I hired one time. I was at Sikorsky when I hired her, and she originally went to university. She wanted to go into retail, got her degree, was managing a retail store, did that for a year or so, and decided this is not the life for me. This is not what I wanted. I'm not happy with it. It's great. She learned it young. So she decided, because her dad was into computers, worked in that field, to go back to school and get a degree in cyber. So she got her degree and she got out, and really in the same boat that you're asking about. She, didn't have any experience. No one was looking to hire her. And she was struggling to find that career that you look for. What she did, and everybody can take a different path, she actually took Sikorsky at the time was owned by United Technology Corporation, UTC. She took a job as an executive assistant in UTC, and she decided to go ahead and get to know people, get exposed. And then when that opening came up, I posted an opening for a new engineer. Of course, we posted internal and external. She applied, and she came down, and we interviewed her and talked to her. And my approach to interviews has always been the same. My team does the first interview. I've got to make sure the dynamics are going to work there, regardless of how brilliant this person may or may not be. If they're not going to work with the team, it's not going to be a good fit. They all liked her, but they said the exact same thing to a T. She has no technical background, and she's not going to, unfortunately, as much as we'd like her, she's not going to bring the skills to the table that we need. I said, well, I want to talk to her. And I talked to her, and very intelligent, very driven individual. And I ended up offering her a job. I said, you know what? I can teach you how to do a lot of the technical stuff. I cannot teach you to have the attitude to go after what you care about. I can't teach you the the connections that you've learned by being up at our corporate headquarters and knowing where everybody is and who does what and what the back doors are and everything. And she ended up being one of the stars on our team. She came down, she focused on the training we gave her. She was able to go do everything. And there were times that we were just like, oh, we need something out of some other business division, or we need it out of headquarters. And she's like, oh, I know who handles that. And she had all these connections that, even though some of my team had been there 20 years, they didn't have. So, that's one path. If you love it, go after it, be diligent, be willing to take that alternative path in like she did. The second, my path wasn't clear to computers. I loved computers, as I said. I did it since a kid. In fact, I when I was in high school, my parents bought an IBM PC XT. And, back then I was young enough, I didn't appreciate how expensive those were or what it meant. Didn't even at the time realize that my parents had bought it on payments and literally just brought it home. We didn't technically own it and all those things. And, the first day we brought it home, I set it up, I started messing with it. And, my parents went to bed and I'm still up, and they get up the next morning and I haven't gone to bed. And I'm like, hey, look at this. And I had every component torn out of it. It's just all over the ground, taking it apart. And I'd put it back together. Were pleased. My dad said he about had a heart attack on the spot. He didn't know how he was going to pay for it. And here it was in pieces. He didn't know if it'd work again. And I put it back together and it all worked. And he said, that's when I knew where your career was going to go.
Yeah.
And so I did computer work, and I hadn't even finished school, a university. And I, was having a good time. I worked for a record store chain. They had 23 locations around the area. I'm 21 years old, carrying 2 beepers and, making good money and going to all these record stores and taking care of all of our computer systems. They were video, VHS rental systems at the day and the time, right?
Yeah.
Point of sale, stuff like that. And finally, I moved on to Tandy Corporation and was doing professional services. And
I used to have a Tandy computer, Steve.
Oh, yeah. Oh, yeah. I remember those. And my boss came to me one day. He's like, Steve, I've got good and bad news. I'm like, well, what's that? He goes, and this is about every 6 months. He goes, we want to promote you. And then literally about every 6 months, it promoted me. It was great. He said, we want to promote you. He goes, but I can't. I said, well, why is that? You don't have a college degree. And he was right. I started school and started working and did well, and college slipped to the side. And that was my impetus to go back and get a degree. And so, while I was in school, I came in with a lot of experience that the other students didn't have. That allowed me to challenge professors in a positive way, to be able to say, why are we doing this? This is not how I did it in the real world. Why, let's go down that path. But
I bet they loved you.
Actually, they did, for the most part. I'll tell you a story about school charges in a minute, but that's but so I got a job in the university labs, supporting the students that would come in, helping them with computers. It was something I could put on my resume. It was something I could talk about. So, finding those ways, today, having a digital portfolio, of the different things you did. You talked about the young man at the beginning who did the intro, being able to show that in a digital portfolio. Things like that are critical to moving in.
Going back to what you said at the start, you didn't say this. I'm putting words in your mouth, but I'll say that you did. It's not. Okay. It's not what you know; it's who you know. I think, and your network is your net worth is another one that I'll throw in there. And spent some time with Ephraim on a call yesterday, and the first thing we're doing is building out his LinkedIn profile so people can start noticing him, because he's not even on LinkedIn. Well, he is now since yesterday. But then It's about showcasing what he's learned and how that applies to jobs he could do. So that's kind of what I've told him to focus on. Don't just say you're top 2% in Try Hack Me or you've just passed this exam. Tell me what that means. Tell me what you've learned. Tell me how you can relate that.
Yep. I would agree. The other thing I think that's important, if you're young in your career, it's less important for somebody like me who has, a couple decades in it. your certifications.
Yeah.
Your certifications don't tell me you can do it when I go to hire you. They tell me that you could pass an exam, but at least I know you have a foundation. So those certs are important too when you're looking about it.
Very, very much so. The problem I think in the market at the moment that we see is that everyone's got the same certs, and as you rightly said at the start, it's then differentiating yourself and making yourself stand out compared to everyone else. So you need the certs, but you also then need to just go a step beyond that, I think. And
Unfortunately, you need the certs to get in the front door today.
yeah,
And that's the reality of it. Even with my background, because I don't have a CISSP, there are applications and companies that will just automatically reject me. And I'm like, why would I go get a cert that came out 10 years after I was already in the field? It makes no sense. It brings zero value. And a company that wants to reject me up front, unfortunately, at the point in my career, I don't care.
yeah,
The
I'm with
companies
you.
that know my value will find me. But if you're entering this field, it's important. The other piece of that, CISSP is a good one. If you've been in this field for a long time, you can answer almost any question with any answer they have and make it work. They're trying to get to the right one for the book. And that just drives
Exactly.
me nuts.
Me too.
Because
Yeah,
honestly, I want that employee who can answer it 5 ways. And because sometimes you've got to do it differently to make it work
you
in the
have.
real
Yeah.
world. So
Let's
all that.
let's jump back in the chat quickly. I'm conscious of time. I haven't even asked you the 2 questions I've got on my list yet because I've taken you off on a tangent as I do every week, Steve. So Raven has just mentioned here, Steve, how big of a gap in school courses compared to the real world IT security jobs where tech is moving so fast? I can speak from a UK perspective. I've still got my cybersecurity degree books by my knees down here, and I haven't opened them in about 9 months because most of it was out of date when they sent them to me. I don't know what it's like in the US.
Yeah, it's the same. Yeah, it's funny. I considered a career change about 5, 6 years ago. And I considered going into education because I do enjoy teaching. And what I found, at least here in the US, is that because I don't have a PhD, they didn't consider me qualified. And none of my experience, the fact that I did all this matters. They're looking for people that went through and got a PhD. And if you got that PhD, you can turn around and teach it. On the theoretical side, the universities do pretty well.
Yeah,
Some of that is nice. The real world practical side, they struggle. And it's not entirely their fault. It is partially the fact that the technology changes so quickly. It's the fact that, take what we're here for, the CISO experience, right? If I said, what's a CISO? Almost every one of you would give a slightly different answer. And some of those answers
yeah,
would be a great variance. It still is that security engineer that sits in the back room, never talks to the executives. The great cyber hacker that you see on TV. And then, someone else is going to come out with they're a business leader. They don't understand anything technical. And there's everything in between. So the fact that, we have a key role in the cyber industry, the CISO, that doesn't even have a commonly accepted definition,
correct.
makes it very hard for the university to come out and say, this is where it is and this is how it is. So,
It does because some businesses, especially technology firms, the CISO becomes a sales enabler as well. He gets
yeah,
involved in the whole sales pipeline. You then look at other firms where the CISO would be in the back room. And again, back to the skill sets. Sometimes, depending on the firm, you need a more technical CISO, and other firms you need a more business focused CISO. Again, that it's hard to put a definitive value on the role, isn't it?
well, I don't think it's hard to put a value. I think we're very valuable, but
That's bad
well,
terminology.
I would actually argue too that most companies are still missing the key point. When I'm asked what's the most important thing in cyber, I start with culture.
Yeah,
Not necessarily the answer most people expect, but it is culture. And that's followed by people, process, and technology in that order. I don't have a culture that's ultimately willing to embrace cyber. I can go into an organization that doesn't. They have to be willing to change, be willing to learn, right? And that has to be embraced both at the top and the bottom.
yeah.
If you can't change that culture, you'll never bring that company to a cyber maturity that's needed.
Well, that
right?
it's as though this is a seamless link, Steve, actually, to one of the questions I was going to ask you. So
All right.
before I forget what it is, because I'm nearly 50 and I do have those memory blanks from time to time, and that's just happened now I've said that. I was going to talk about challenges in the industry and going to RSA this year. I didn't see any messages about people, very few about education, but I saw lots about shift left and zero trust. And the industry as a whole has got, at the moment, on the last stats I was told 2 weeks ago by an Israeli CISO, 3,500 products, 3,500 cybersecurity products in the market. I mean, the market's at the point, still in its infancy. It's at the stage now where there's too much stuff. At some point, it will slim down. But that noise itself and the marketing messaging, which is my favorite topic, seems to be focusing attention the wrong way sometimes.
Yeah, and no knock on RSA. They need to sell products, right? They need to
Yeah,
sell services. I get it. But as a CISO, yeah, I love that comment. Culture always
yeah, me
wins.
too.
Um, as a CISO, if you want to be successful, it's going to be culture. And it's how do you drive that forward? And it really starts with the people. And then it follows with your processes. And that technology, yeah, I need that technology. And I need better technology in many cases. And I certainly need the technology I have in place to work together better than what it does today. I don't need 90 different disparate, columns of information that I don't know how they correlate and work together. So there's certainly plenty of room for technology improvement, but it's not where we're going. And it's about changing the culture. And candidly, it's, as I travel around the globe, in most places, it's not just the culture of the organization, but it's the culture of the uh, countries you're in and the national politics. And again, I'm not going political in conservative or not conservative, left or right or any of that. You know, are we going to embrace things that will allow us as a nation to improve? Like it or not, don't care what nation you are, you have enemies. You have
Yeah.
people that want to steal your information, steal your funding, change your elections. You know, that is the reality of it. So, are we going to secure that? How do we do that? That's a culture change. And so, I think that is just critical. And when I talk about people that I want to hire, when we talk about the skills gap that we were talking about, I am typically more interested in those soft skills. What are you going to bring to the culture? How are you going to be able to sit in a room and realize that you have the best technical solution in the world? Nobody understands it. How do you change that culture to embrace that? Not just say, trust me, but actually be able to say, this is why it's going to make those improvements. And those soft skills become so critical to really improving everything that your organization does, to having the organization realize that, yeah, you're not that tech geek who sits in the corner and makes some decisions and bits and bytes go someplace and it's all good, but you're fundamental to the way the business operates. You're fundamental to our strategic vision. You're fundamental to shifting the way we're going to shift because of the changes in the global economy and all that. So
So
that's
would
critical.
you say the biggest challenge in the industry then, other people talk about the buzzwords like AppSec or zero trust or APIs or whatever it might be this week. What do you think our biggest challenge is as an industry?
I'll start by saying I love zero trust, and we've been talking about it for 2 decades.
Just called it
Um,
something else before. Yeah.
well, no, not even that. We've been using the term zero trust for almost 2 decades. It's technology is finally coming to a point where we begin serious implementations and seriously moving it forward. But as a community, we understood that we needed zero trust a long time ago, that the old, you know, castle and moat defense, was not going to work.
No.
But that we needed it. But I think the biggest challenge is still comes back to culture. It's not about technology. Yes, we need better technology. Yes, we need more funding. Yes, we need more resources. I'm not trying to ignore any of that. It's all real. But if you gave me all that, it's not going to solve my problems.
No.
It's not going to change the fact that the average person carries a cell phone and thinks that because of that, they understand technology as well or better than the rest of the information security and information technology teams. It's not going to change the fact that when a CISO gets up and talks about, here's what we're doing for our organization, people sit there and think in the back of their mind, you know what, it'll be okay because I do use that cell phone and it works just fine for me when it works. And when it doesn't, I don't understand why, but I just try another app and something goes okay. So I don't see the need for all that. I'm being a little facetious, but it is kind of the world we live in. Nobody goes to the doctor because they're having issues with their heart or their lungs or whatever it is and says, no, doc, I think I know better than you. They kind of go, well, I may be scared. You want to give me a heart transplant? What? That's a big deal. And I may get a second opinion, but I'm still finding out how to get a heart transplant. I'm not deciding that I know more than the doctor. In technology, that's our biggest challenge. People think they know more than the experts.
I'm laughing, Steve, because last night, I'll tell you this story now. My 13-year-old, I've got a new laptop for work, and I gave him my old Razer laptop for him to use for his own purposes. So wiped it all clean, set it up for him last night. He comes downstairs with it. He went, Dad, can I download Popcorn Time? I went, what's Popcorn Time? Tells me what it is. It's an illegal download site, basically, where you can watch films before they come out in the cinema. So the answer was a clearly resounding no. And the reason for that was twofold. One, Jude, it's illegal, and it's at my address that you're doing it, and I don't really want to get in trouble. And secondly, these sites are riddled with viruses. Oh, yeah, Dad. But yeah, Dad. Right, he knew best, didn't he? Fast forward 45 minutes, Steve. Guess what happened? Dad, laptop's not working. Riddled with viruses it was within 45 minutes. So I've just wiped the laptop. He's gone back to his mum's. The laptop stayed here. That's stage one of the lesson, but he still isn't listening to me. Does that ever change?
Well, you said you've got some that are my son's age, so
I have.
it
Yeah,
doesn't.
to be fair, my 23-year-old does listen. Well, he nods and makes out that he
yeah,
is.
I'm sure if you went and talked to my parents, they'd tell you I don't listen well. So
my elderly mum still says the same now. Yeah, absolutely. Conscious of time again. There's been another question in here. Where was it? Let's have a look. Hey, Splodge, good to see you here. By the way, no worries. Understand that you have to work. Raven's put just recently, Cisco was breached by social engineering. Large issue to security is also people and our mistakes. Very much so. And the other one was back up the top from InfoSec Dwight, who's another member of the community. Since CISSP requires 5 years experience to get, what other alternative certs would you recommend?
It depends on where you're going, right? I more than the certs, I think the experience. You want your CISSP, you can go after some of the Microsoft or some of the Cisco ones, but those just show that you have the aptitude to learn. That they get you through the front door, and that's really how I look at the certs for most people. They get you through that first check, and that's what it is, a checkbox. And I'm sorry if I offend somebody by that, but it's a checkbox. Do you meet these 15 things we laid out? Yes, no, throw you to the side. Now I only deal with 100 responses today instead of 500, right? So what's going to make you jump out on that resume is what's next. And that's where your experience comes in. And I know we talked earlier about how do you get that experience, and that's where you look for those things. And it could be volunteer. I really don't care if you were paid, $100,000 an hour for your job, or you volunteered out of the kindness of your heart for your job. I care about what you did, what skills you did, how you were able to do it. In fact, sometimes in those volunteer positions, your resources are even less. So you had to be very creative to get things done. Talk to me about that. Show that off. Show me that, even though normally we use these tools and go down this path, you didn't have any of them. You found a way to get it done. You found a way to clean up that virus or recover that data, or to lock down something that was, letting your data leak out, whatever it was. So go after that. And yeah, for the fan, 20 frames per second.
I could just imagine Robert doing this. I hope you're not, Robert.
It feels good on me. That's all I'll say.
Oh, do you know what? I've got a towel here because I haven't got a fan, so I'm slightly jealous, and I'd rather have the fan than a sweaty towel. So we've got 3 or 4 minutes left. We're over time a little bit, but I want to just talk quickly about the successes of the industry. What are we doing right, Steve? Because all I talk about is what we're doing wrong. So I thought we'd try and change it a bit for the end
Yeah,
today.
no, that's interesting. So, right, what makes the news? Breach here, something happened there. The reality is, every time we don't make the news, every time our companies and our bosses don't realize that everything worked today is a success. Our success is typically things just work the way they were supposed to.
Yeah.
And so there is a reframing in your mind. Success is not that grand championship. You're not going to hear Queen playing at the end of your day. We are the
I love
champions.
that song.
Yep. So,
sorry.
So you're not going to go there. But that's re-educate.
No, sorry. It's my children screaming. I was trying to mute the mic, but I managed to turn my camera off.
So I see people are asking to reach me. Can you post my LinkedIn profile in?
Yeah, of course. I'll keep it muted while you keep talking while my wife doesn't beat, but tells the children off.
Yeah. No worries. But so success is there. Success is actually getting your organization to realize that you sit at the same table as the rest of the executive leaders and you're part of that decision. And we have to realize as cyber folks who have fought to get to that table that, there's compromises there. Yes, I think strictly from a risk perspective, my idea may be better, but looking at it in the entire context of operating the business, it's not any better. Sorry, other than
I forgot you're not on LinkedIn, are you, Robert? If it's all right with you, Steve, are you all right for me to pass your email across afterwards?
Yeah,
that's
fine.
He's not a stalker. He's not a stalker. He's a nice bloke. It's all right.
No, I was just laughing because I tend not to give out my information in Discord. I use for Diablo 3 with my son. We have a wonderful gaming session once a week.
Brilliant.
But other than that, I don't tend to hang out in Discord. Believe it or not, I don't like to talk.
I don't believe that. I mean, I've been on social media twice in my life. Once was back in, I better get this right or my wife will kill me, 2015, when I got with my wife, who's younger than me, not that much, but 12 years younger. And as some middle-aged men do who've never had social media profiles, I may have created a Facebook and a Twitter account at that point and posted wedding pictures to show my wife off. Other than that, 6 months until 13 months ago, I haven't been on social media at all. And the problem with that is I realized 18 months ago that to get anywhere in business now, you need a kind of profile on social media, but I've still kept it strictly to LinkedIn. So I'm still not on Facebook. I've got an InfoSec Twitter account, but other than that, no personal stuff.
And I created my Facebook, Twitter, and some of the others just to lock up my personal URL.
Yeah.
And I don't post. And then I use LinkedIn because from a business perspective, to be out there and communicate, to be able to, like you said, have someone look at your profile, those things. But it's not my natural inclination. I'm a cyber guy. I like to shut up, listen to the room, understand what's going on, and, be a man of few words if I can do it.
Well, so. I'm not gonna have that. I need some more words out of you before we finish. I suppose that leads us on to, are you looking for work at the moment? Are you looking for consultancy work or anything?
Oh, always looking for consultancy work. So my team, we help a lot of different companies around the globe. The real focus, as I said, in the defense space around CMMC and the NIST standards. But we work with all standards, HIPAA, so on, ISO, doesn't matter. It's to go very simple. It's all about educating companies and helping them improve their cyber posture at the end of the day, helping them to learn how to do that. Sometimes helping the CISO talk about how to change a culture, admitting that it's completely unfair. And I've been on the other side of the table where I thought it was unfair too. I'm the consultant brought in at the moment. And when I talk to the rest of the C-suite, they tend to listen to me. When I was in the CISO row, hey, you're one of us. Well, yeah, we can ignore you.
Yeah.
Not fair. It's the
It's
reality.
the way it is in any
I've
industry, I
got,
think.
right. And I've got the street credentials that they do listen, that they can listen. So absolutely. If somebody wants to, talk about something, please reach out. Happy to have a discussion with you. Even if it's just to understand someday in the future you want to talk about
I'll tell
something.
you what, I wouldn't mind having another chat with you off camera. We've been dealing with some clients in the UK who work in the energy sector, and their regulation is becoming, I suppose, more in synergy with the US with regards to NIST and other
Yeah.
frameworks that they're now looking at bringing in. And I think the UK energy sector is in a bit of turmoil over it at the moment, because all of a sudden lots of different things are going to come in their scope that they kind of haven't looked at before.
Yeah. No, happy to have that conversation. We're seeing similar things, MOD, Australian Defense Forces. They're looking heavily at what the US DoD has been doing around their defense and cyber. And it makes a lot of sense, right? At least for allies to be similar, set a similar baseline. And as I say to everybody, nothing's perfect, but it's nice to have a good starting point and to build from there. And that's what a lot of these standards do. And understanding how to bring it into your environment, how to use it is so important. I I was in DC 2 weeks ago, and I'm shocked at some of the questions that are still coming up about this is hard around things that really we put into place a decade ago, and
Yeah,
it's just been the, the companies have refused to commit, and then you have folks who may be very good at what they do technically, but they don't have the business skills, who
very
can't
much.
sell it, and they throw their hands up and say, "But my company." They just don't want to go down this path. I don't know what to do. And so, again, it's those soft skills. It's about changing the leadership direction. It has nothing to do with your direct cyber skills, your technical skills at that point, but trying to help them understand why it makes a difference. I wrote an article, I'm going to guess 2 years ago at this point. I think it's still out in LinkedIn someplace, but talking about why companies need to be concerned with deep fakes and how it's going to start changing and how that's going to affect your 10Ks and 10Qs, and how you do that when the CEO says something, or a fake recording is put out when there's a defective product, saying, hell, we knew about that, we didn't care, just roll the profits in, right? How are you going to prove that your company didn't say those things? And
Yeah,
you really need to be thinking about all that now, because a lot of these things are going to come back to haunt you. Your government, my government, and most governments, to be fair, are capturing every piece of digital information that
yeah,
traverses through their country. Why? Because they know it's only a couple of years until they can break all that. The stuff that's not encrypted today, they already look at, but the rest of it, they will. This isn't about being paranoid. This is the reality of what's happening. And so, as an organization who's saying, well, I'm sending an encrypted email, this will never come out. Well, it will. The question is, what are you doing to get in front of it? How does it fit into your strategic plans? How do you prove what's authentic, what isn't? So, I mean, there's all these things. 2 years ago, people weren't thinking about deep fakes. Now we're beginning to, again, think about the curve a little bit, and it's becoming more popular as it gets easier. There's been some good examples of people just using cloud services to come up with not ones that would fool the masses today, but for $50 an hour's worth of work, they're
yeah.
pretty decent. And that's not nation states trying to wreak havoc. So,
Going back to
yeah,
right back to the start, actually, what you first started talking about, the R word, regulation, and you say about a decade since we've been telling people to do things. I don't think until regulation comes in, people will. And I'm not a huge fan of all regulation. Working in financial services for 20 years, we had masses of it to adhere to even, start a business. You're looking at capital adequacy requirements, you're looking at all different things that you have
right.
to take into account. And that needs to happen in this industry, whether we like it or not. It's like the crypto market, isn't it? I'm not a crypto salesman. I sold out of all my very small holding about 6 months ago because I thought it was going to go down. However, I still think long term, and I've got crypto in my pension because I believe 10 years plus it will come back. But before that happens, the R word has got to come in again.
It's got to happen. I know at least here in the U.S., about every 6 months or so, I kind of make the rounds up on the Hill and talk with various members of Congress. They're really looking more for general guidance. I get an update about every 10 days or so on cyber legislation, drafts, what's going on in conference, the markups, follow all that. Certainly in the U.S., you look at where the SEC's proposed rules are. The state of New York around financial organizations has new rules out, again, proposed, but they're all about improving. They're all about disclosure. They're all about holding the board accountable. And sadly, I agree with you, Simon, until they're held accountable, most of these companies aren't going to go after it.
No.
SOX here in the US was a big deal. And yet that has just a tiny, tiny piece of cyber. But it drove the first real change in cyber, over 2 decades ago. And that's Section 404 is nothing compared to the actual SOX Act from a financial perspective.
No, I completely agree. I think, again, from a regulation point of view, the amount of products in the market that say they do something and don't, there's a bit of an issue there as well. It seems like there's a new name coming out every day that's had 50 million seed fund like 18 months ago that doesn't seem to be doing the trick. I can't mention any names, but I have seen a couple in the press this week, big names where it doesn't seem to do an awful lot. And that, I know I'm going off on a bit of a tangent. That then brings us back to the tech boom and how VCs and PEs were throwing money at tech companies with no real underlying fundamentals and valuations. I think we've seen a lot of that over the last 18 months to 2 years in this industry, with money being thrown at firms. And I'm a little bit concerned, with the way the global economy is going, because, we need a recession, whether we like it or not. It's cyclical. Economic cycles go like this. We need it to go down. And it's who's still going to be around in 3 years, I suppose, to take advantage of it.
I look at all the technology through 2 lenses: situational awareness and operational awareness. How does it affect me there? Yeah, no technology I've seen is going to be a magic silver bullet that makes me secure. So how is it going to improve my current situational awareness or operational awareness? And then I can figure out if it makes sense or doesn't it. And if it doesn't come through those lenses, as cool as it might be, as nice as it might be, or maybe it makes such a tiny incremental change, I'm not going to invest my time and money into it. So that's, the filter I've always used on the new technology. Hey, I'm a geek. At the end of the day, I love the newest technology. I like to have the latest gadget in my house. I like to play with it, but not in my business. I had at Lockheed, I had a very unique situation, and I applaud the employees of that company because I get to say this. I had to approve the cyber on all the projects that went on. Well, they would come in, and most of them were very security conscious, not just cyber, but security in general, physical, operational. It didn't matter. They held security clearances with the U.S. government. They were on, classified projects. They got it. So they would come in and say, okay, here's what we want to do. Here's how we're going to protect it. Boom, 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 boom. Look at it. Okay, that looks good. Now we have some other ideas. We'd like to go further. We'd like to do all these things. And I'd actually have to say, thank you. I love the ideas. Keep bringing them in. However, I got to be commercially feasible also, right? Sometimes you can actually say there is too much security. So as a CISO, I actually got to say no to some security instead of the other way around. You're not secure enough, so no, you can't do this. It was, no, you are plenty secure. You will not do these things. Fantastic place to be.
Yeah, absolutely. Steve, I'm going to have to wrap things up. We've gone over. It's been really, really insightful, and I thank you so much for your time. Any final words before I wrap things up and beg people to like and subscribe to our content?
Well, definitely like and subscribe. It's good content. But no, final words, I guess I would just say, if you're in this job, understand that it's going to be full of change every day. What you think it is today, it will not be tomorrow. But it comes with a lot of rewards. It comes with a lot of challenges. It lets you work all over the globe. I've been fortunate. I've worked with every major ally of the U.S. with their militaries, with their governments, with large multinational companies. I've traveled and seen things that would terrify you from an individual perspective to an operational perspective, seen holes in the data center in the middle of a jungle staring at a rainforest. But I've also had wonderful examples and just, moments where you're proud to know those individuals and people who have stepped up. And so it ultimately is a rewarding career. It will kill your hair. I'm sorry.
I've only been in the industry 18 months. I had a full head of hair before I started as well.
Yeah. Well, I'm only 19 and you see what it did to my beard.
I tell you what, the takeout there for me, we're trying Bramfit Technology Labs I'm talking about now. We're looking to get into the MOD space, MOD contracts, and I've been on a couple of calls about that over the last few weeks. So I'd love to pick your brains off camera about potential ways in. I'd really appreciate that. But Steve, it's been amazing. I must catch up again after my holidays. I'm going to talk about that again. I'm going on holiday tomorrow, and it's well needed. Nice. But in the meantime, everyone who's tuned in, everyone who's jumped in the chat, thank you so much for coming along and making it so exciting and interesting today. If you haven't already, please do like and subscribe to the content. And I'm going to play you out with a little teaser for a new show that we've got starting on the 22nd of August, which is called Which Cyber Pathway? And our first guest is Jason Shockey, who's a CISO for a bank actually in New York, but he's also the founder of mycyberpath.com, which is a website which has a free option as well, gives you a psychometric profile test and helps you work out what job out of the 50 or 60 there are in the industry that you can do. And for me, it's something I wish I'd come across 2 years ago before I wasted loads of money on OSCP and failed that and didn't become a pen tester. And for me, it's learning what you're good at. And Steve mentioned it earlier, the word success. Success is different for every single one of us. And for me, success is a mindset, not a destination, I suppose, is my parting shot of the day. And I'll play you all out with a little video. Again, thank you, Steve. Thanks, everyone. See you soon.
Thanks, everybody.